final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Well, I think they struggle a little bit, but, you look at some of their losses, it's like, a lot of us teams, we go through a period where you lose some tight games and then you get beat by somebody you're not supposed to get beat by and you're frustrated. And, he's got an older group. I mean, I think his lineup consists of 5 seniors in it right now and a junior shortstop that was drafted. So they've got older kids that knew how to handle it.
Well, that should make for a very entertaining watch for the fans, for the media, for everybody interested. You're going to see a lot of good players out there that pretty soon after this whole run is over for these teams will be playing professional baseball. So it's a chance to see them play on a college field competing at the highest level.
And a pleasant good evening to you and yours, and welcome into Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on this Friday, the 8th day of June, 2018, along with Professor Tom Hayes, yours truly, Will Pelagic. Phil Kornblut has the evening off, but we'll keep you entertained nonetheless. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Tweet us at SportsTalkSC. We will have multiple reports from Fayetteville, Arkansas, which will center around, of course, South Carolina's Super Regional against the Arkansas Razorbacks. It begins tomorrow, 6:30, ESPN2 for Game 1. It'll be Adam Hill on the hill for South Carolina going up against the undefeated Blaine Knight, 11-0 on the season. Sunday at 3 p.m. on ESPN Game 2. We expect to see Cody Morris and Casey Murphy in that matchup. And then if a Monday matchup, decisive Game 3 happens, you'll see the Hilton Head freshman Carmen Majinski against Isaiah Campbell of Arkansas. We've really dissected this matchup about as much as we have been able to over the week pro, but in my mind, this is a different matchup than we saw earlier in the year. South Carolina comes in with more confidence. They come in with better weather, but they also come in with the renewed confidence in the fact that not only have they gone through the gauntlet they've been through, but they know they belong at this point.
Well, they're confident, and let's face it, they've been down in the holy hell at one point.
Yes.
And I think they see how it looks and they didn't like it. But the key point is the adjustment to a new coaching staff plus the injury bug bit them early. I think they now not only have confidence, but they have a personality to them. They know how they can win ball games. They never quit. They've come from behind and won some big ball games. The key point now is South Carolina teams have always had problems at Arkansas for whatever reason. But this year, I think everybody throws that series out the window just because the weather, a lot of the players on both sides seem to succumb to the weather, the chilliness, the raininess. So this is going to be a whole different affair, but I think it's going to be a good series.
Interestingly enough, there's a lot to at least like from South Carolina's side of it, although Arkansas does bring about 3 very big arms. And that's, I think, the thing that concerns me is that if this offense goes to sleep at any point during the weekend, that could spell peril for South Carolina. And I think we will know very early on against Blaine Knight whether or not South Carolina is here to play. Because if they can't get their hits against them, I don't know if they can pitch to the level where they can win a 2-1 ball game. The way they need to win is they need to hit the crap out of the ball.
Well, they have to score some runs. There's no doubt. You don't want to put a level on it, but if you can stay within the parameters of 6 or 7 runs, especially in a couple of ball games, you like your chances because South Carolina is one of those teams, if their pitchers do not give free passes, and if they play the type of defense they played the last month and a half, 2 months, they got a chance to beat anybody. The pressure is on Arkansas. You want to stay in ball games because this is Arkansas's chance. South Carolina was not supposed to be here, not with a new coaching staff. And suddenly they're here, and, they're going to be a loose bunch, in my opinion.
Stop down on that just because, again, you think about who the pressure is more on. I think that there is more pressure on Arkansas, but I also think that there is a significant amount of pressure on South Carolina from this simple fact, in the fact that we saw basically by the Major League Baseball draft, there were 10 players drafted from this team, and there were at least 2 to 4 guys who were brought in as signees who are probably going to leave as well, go straight to Major League Baseball. This is their really, I don't want to say only run at this thing, but this is probably the best run that they're going to take because of the fact that they have the collection of talent next year. I'm not saying it's a rebuild completely, but they will have to replace a ton going into next year.
Yeah, and but they've had a good recruiting class so far. It'd be interesting to see how many of those signees actually do not sign a professional deal. The key point is if we can play a semantics game, there's a little bit of a difference between playing with pressure and playing with urgency.
Yes.
I would agree with you that this South Carolina team, because of the number of seniors they have on it, have a sense of urgency that this is our last chance to get to Omaha.
Mm-hmm. That's an only chance, really.
That's a little bit different from the pressure of knowing you're the better team and you have the home field advantage. And if you don't get it done, the pressure is there. So if I'm South Carolina and you're sitting there and maybe even Arkansas has a 1 or 2 run lead, I'm in the ball game. I think Arkansas is going to feel some pressure to get it done. And how we handle our sense of urgency versus how they handle their pressure is going to be the mental side of this series.
The road to this point for Arkansas included a perfect weekend, much like South Carolina had. South Carolina had wins over Ohio State, ECU, and UNC Wilmington in their regional. Oral Roberts, Southern Miss, and Dallas Baptist was the road that Arkansas made, and they beat a Dallas Baptist team who we saw play Clemson earlier in the year, and that's a team that usually is very much in the mix as the upset realm. I'm not saying that South Carolina's road was tougher or worse, but the fact that they are battle-tested and they do have that road experience going into this, this is very much a we all we got situation for South Carolina.
Well, the key point for South Carolina is I think they gained a ton of confidence for the postseason when they had heard all about this Ohio State reliever, and they came in there and just bashed him. And from then on, I think they didn't even look back after that. Yeah,
Seth Kinker was very ineffective, had one of the top ERAs coming in, but Ohio State was dispatched summarily by South Carolina. 800-956-7266. A quick check of the leaderboard of the FedEx St. Jude Classic. We see a familiar face at the top. Dustin Johnson is at -10 after shooting a 7-under 63 today. So he is 1 shot ahead of Ryan Blum at 9 under par, and Andrew Putnam also at 9 under par. And our good friend Wesley Bryan is 2 shots off the lead right now. He's playing on the last right now, getting himself in at 8 under par right now. He shot 66 yesterday. He's trying to bid for a second 66 to give him 8 under par, 2 off the lead going into the weekend in Memphis, the final tune-up for the U.S. Open at Shinnecock this next weekend on Father's Day weekend. Clemson has a new basketball opponent to think about as well. Mississippi State will be a game neutral site for them. They will take them on in Newark this upcoming season in a tournament that will benefit the children of the victims of September 11th attacks at the Prudential Center up there at the Rock. And just another showing from Brad Brownell's squad that they'll take on any comer anywhere.
You got to have a really good schedule. And I think it's good to see more SEC and ACC teams playing each other.
Sure.
And let's face it, Clemson has done that in the in their non-conference season. They played in Auburn. They played at Georgia. They play, of course, their rival South Carolina. So they run a gauntlet of the SEC, it seems, every year as far as basketball is concerned.
They beat Florida last year in that Orange Bowl Classic, too, which was on paper a neutral site game in Sunrise, Florida, but certainly more orange and blue in the stands there than there were orange and regalia. But Clemson got a victory there. Of course, as you mentioned, they will play their game against South Carolina, as previously reported by John Rothstein. That's going to take place around Christmas at Colonial Life Arena. I think it's the 22nd or 23rd is when that game is scheduled to tip off. And, of course, we'll be very much looking forward to that. 800-956-7266 is how you get to us at SportsTalkSC on Twitter. We're going to hear from the Arkansas head coach, Dave Van Horn, and a question that I will give to you, Professor, that some people were saying over the course of the last week. I don't necessarily agree. We'll see if you do, and we'll see if you do as well listening at home, not only on our radio stations across the state, our Periscope at SportsTalkSC, but also on TuneIn Radio app. We'll come back. Sports Talk for a Friday continues after this.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We're keeping an eye on what's going on in the NCAA baseball tournament. We just got done seeing Washington beat Cal State Fullerton 8-5. Of course, the Titans of Cal State Fullerton, perennial mainstay in this tournament. The perennial, I would say, of the non-Power Fives that usually makes their way in out west. But Washington playing on the road there gets a victory. North Carolina was given all they can handle by the Stetson Hatters, and Stetson came in, obviously having hosted their own regional there in Florida, and of course not necessarily as intimidated by the scene in Chapel Hill, but the Tar Heels do get the victory, winning 7-4. Right now they're playing in Corvallis. It's 4-0 in favor of Oregon State. How in the world are they playing in all that rain, Pro?
Because they tell them in Oregon this is about the best you're going to get this time of year.
So
my sister lives out there. I know it gets rainy and kind of drizzly out there. But for them, this is kind of a light fare right here. But I was interested in that Cal State Fullerton game because I think probably the whole monkey wrench that was thrown in what we thought, if you were playing chalk as far as who gets to Omaha, you would have sworn that Stanford was right there.
Yes.
And Cal State just dispatched with them in their own regional. And then they come home and they lose to a Washington team who was the last team we thought would come out of that Conway regional.
Yeah.
But they did.
Yeah, it's weird. They had to take probably the longest trek of any team in the NCAA's first round down to Conway and play, of course, in that Coastal Carolina, UConn, and LIU Brooklyn regional. And Coastal Carolina had some of the problems that they'd had all the course of the season with pitchers not being able to basically keep themselves inside the strike zone. There were a lot of walks given up on Gary Gilmore's squad, and Washington just kind of stayed the course. And with them and UConn was a team that many thought deserved a host in that first 16, but they had kind of the same problems that Duke had with the ability to host because of their ballpark. And now Duke, of course, has advanced on it. It's funny how these teams with disadvantageous situations in the NCAA tournament have advanced as far as they have, like UConn and obviously Duke going out of the Super Regional.
I think if you weren't a college baseball fan, but you got a taste of it the first weekend, I think it really just ignited more fans to follow it, because I think the sport becomes tremendously interesting when you see a lot of road teams win. And I think in my mind, since I've been watching college baseball for years, this is the first time I've seen so many road teams just come in and ambush prohibitive favorites, including a few top 8 national seeds.
Looking at it, I believe it was 7, 8, 9. Actually, that was more than that. Auburn was 1. You look at Duke, they were a 2nd one. South Carolina was a 3rd. Tennessee Tech was a 4th. Mississippi State was a 5th. Vanderbilt a 6th. Washington a 7th, and Fullerton an 8th. So half of the host seeds did not win this past week. And you mentioned Duke. Obviously, South Carolina is involved. And the one thing too that is very evident if you look at the bracket is the strength of the SEC, and that of course means that you have at least 3 teams out of the conference guaranteed to get there because all 6 of them are playing each other. Florida is playing Auburn in Gainesville. You have Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. Vanderbilt, of course, getting out of the Clemson Regional, and Mississippi State getting out of that Florida State Regional because of the ill-advised moves by Mike Martin, whether or not you agreed with him bringing out that pitcher, Drew Parrish, on 100 pitches after a 2.5-hour rain delay. I know many people were balking at him for that. I don't necessarily like to balk at a man who's got 1,900 victories to his name, but one would say that could have been a curious move. And Vanderbilt, of course, got out of the Clemson Regional, as we said. And, of course, this Arkansas-South Carolina matchup. These two actually met back in the 2012 NCAA Tournament in the College World Series, final season of Ray Tanner's tenure at South Carolina. Arkansas pushed South Carolina to the brink. But, of course, Carolina came back in the losers bracket, as you remember, beating Arkansas twice to get to the final series before losing to Arizona. Those were the final wins of Ray Tanner's career. The head coach at Arkansas then and now was Dave Van Horn. He spoke earlier today with our correspondent in Fayetteville about this series and also the roster construction of a team many believe is a favorite this week and possibly a favorite to get to Omaha and win it all.
Well, we felt like that if we could get a couple of older guys back that would mix in with some of the younger guys, it would definitely give us an opportunity to have some older guys kind of lead us early until some of the younger guys got it going, because we knew we had talented young kids coming in here. You didn't know what they were going to do with it. What they've done. But, yeah, I mean, it kind of evolves over time. We knew we needed to, get better offensively a few years back. And, they changed the baseball back a couple of years ago. It started to fly a little bit better, and it's made for a better game. But always at the same time, you got to have enough pitching. You don't want to be lopsided. I feel like this is one of the more balanced teams that we've had since I've been here. And, it's all kind of played out throughout the season.
What do you think of the strange cold and wet first series? Then you have the hot, steamy, wet turf. And now you got the weirdness of all that.
It's just the way it works. When you're playing outside, we're trying to play baseball in the winter early in the season. And everybody calls it the spring season when it's not. And you just have to, handle what's put in front of you in this sport at this time of the year. And, now it's super hot. South Carolina, they playing hot a lot more than we do, but, we're acclimated to it and been in it for a few weeks now. And, it's just part of the game.
Hey, Dave, when you said the other day about kind of giving Gates a pep talk or telling him, hey, you're my guy. Was that before the SEC tournament? When exactly was that? And what prompted you to do that?
Yeah, that was the day before we opened up. We were practicing at Samford University and getting ready to stretch as a team, and I called him over and just told him, hey, you're a senior. You're heading on the way that, kind of asked him. I said, how do you think your year's gone? And he just said, it had gone real good. I said, well, you're going to play first the rest of the year, and you're starting to swing it better, and we need you. And when you get to the park, you don't have to look and see for names on the lineup. And I think he really appreciated it, and he's kind of taken off a little bit.
Is that just the instincts of a veteran coach, kind of knowing what buttons to push when?
I don't know. I guess if it works out, it was.
What do you make of the South Carolina pitching rotation?
They got a great pitching staff. I mean, you could take 3 of those guys and flip them around, and it's all about the same. They all throw hard. They all can pitch, and batting average against them is way down, and they're doing really well. They've done well down the stretch, and they're one of the hottest teams in the league at the last probably month of the season, and made a big run. And I didn't know who they were throwing till this morning, but I kind of suspected that's who they were going to throw.
Kingston said they came back from the dead. What do you think about that?
Well, I think they struggle a little bit, but you look at some of their losses. It's like a lot of us teams, we go through a period where you lose some tight games and then you get beat by somebody you're not supposed to get beat by, and you're frustrated. And he's got an older group. I mean, I think his lineup consists of 5 seniors in it right now and a junior shortstop that was drafted. So they've got older kids that knew how to handle it, and they kicked it into gear.
putting the ball in Blaine's hands, how good is that feeling, especially what he's done the last couple starts?
Well, anytime you have a veteran pitcher like that, you're excited to give him the ball, and we know what we're going to get out of him. You can throw it over the plate and make you earn it, and the defense usually plays pretty well behind him. To get this far, you're going to have guys that can pitch like Blaine Knight and Casey Murphy. If you don't have those guys, you're not playing anymore.
It's Dave Van Horn, the Arkansas head coach, and I know that you would enjoy that comment he made about the player knowing that he's in the lineup because you are big on the cerebral part of the game. That sounds similar to the effect that it had on Danny Blair, knowing after the pinch hit that he got that earned him the playing time. Mark Kingston has told him, hey, you're our guy. You're our guy in the lineup. We're putting you in the lineup at center field. We're leading you off, and you're going to stay there as long as you keep hitting.
And I think for a lot of us, that's why we're sports fans. It's played by human beings and not played by machines. And one guy looks like a world beater the next day, and something can happen to just zap them of their confidence. These guys have been able to persevere and really play hard, and then find a silver lining, and then know that right when they think they're about to quit, here we go. Here's some success. Their concentration picks up. The team enjoys seeing guys come off the deck and play well. I think it's a win-win for both the player and his teammates.
The man who collected that sound for us, Derek Ruskin, will join us here. Former Arkansas radio personality that is now moonlighting for us in the enemy territory. We will get his thoughts not only on this Arkansas team, but his first impressions on South Carolina as they descend upon the Midwest on Sports Talk. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network, along with Professor Tom Hayes, Will Pelagic here with you as we bring you in on a Friday. We, of course, are going to bring you the latest from our friend George Bryan III at the FedEx St. Jude Classic. We're going to talk NASCAR with Monty Dutton as well in our second hour. Colin Taylor of Gamecock Central is going to join us, not only to talk about the Gamecocks, but also about the draft and how that will affect next year's South Carolina season. And, of course, Phil Kornblut's recruiting report comes your way just before the top of the hour, including a very local offer for Clemson, which we'll continue to monitor for you here. And also a potential South Carolina target has set a major official visit for next weekend, and you're not going to believe who is also joining him on that weekend. We say that all, of course, in advance of being joined now by someone who I've termed as our special correspondent in Fayetteville. We stole him from enemy territory to work for us this weekend. Derek Ruskin, former Arkansas morning man and, of course, a correspondent out there for those in Northwest Arkansas. He is taking care of things for us this weekend with Arkansas and South Carolina. Derek, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. How are you?
I'm doing good, Will. Thanks so much for having me on.
So I guess from your standpoint, you've been watching this Arkansas team over not only this past year, but the past couple of years. What has been the secret to, it seems like Dave Van Horn has put this all together and has his best team here to date?
They've got a couple of really talented young players in Martin and Kerstad, and just the pitching's been kind of stabilized for the most part over the last little while. So they've put that together, and just the recruiting has picked up. They've had even losing Tony Vitello, who went to be the head coach at Tennessee last year. He was the hitting coach. They brought in a new hitting coach who was very familiar from Missouri State, right up the road, who it seems like every year, but this year plays Arkansas in the NCAA tournament, sometimes in the super regionals here. But it's really been a well-oiled machine, and Van Horn's right in the middle of it. Absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned Vitello's departure, because we've seen him obviously at Tennessee, and I got to see him. Of course, he was the recruiting coordinator and one of the head recruiters at Missouri before going towards the South, and of course back to Arkansas as well. It just seems to me like recruiting has always kind of been the big part of this team. I mean, even a guy like Kerstad who comes in, I don't want to say that's a diamond in the rough. He's a 36th round selection from last year, and yet he's come on and been basically the SEC Freshman of the Year.
Yeah, he's been terrific, and he's one of those guys I remember going to, I think, a game or two opening weekend even, and he just looks the part. You just look at him and go, that guy can play. And he has been terrific all throughout the year, both offensively. He made a catch that stole a home run last weekend in the Dallas Baptist game, the third game of Arkansas's regional, and it was it came after he dropped a routine pop fly earlier in the ball game. So it was really a kind of make amends moments there for him. It was a play that they've been talking about all week here in Arkansas. But he's phenomenal. Went 5 for 10 last weekend in his first regional in college, and he's been phenomenal to watch all year.
Other than, of course, they've got great talent and the crowd they always seem to have with them, especially when the weather is good and not like it was the first time South Carolina was there. But what makes this team so dominant at home? That you can't say that they're successful because they're playing a great home stadium, but they've absolutely been dominant. What makes them dominant at home?
It's really fascinating. I asked Blaine Knight about that today, and he doesn't really know. It's just something about the comfort was the word he mentioned, and it's so hard to figure out why this team has been so great. They've only lost 3 times at Baum all year. One of them was to South Carolina. They were the last team to beat them at Baum Stadium, as a matter of fact, in that Friday game. But it's just it's so hard to put your finger on, even for them, why it has played out this year. And in the road games that they've lost, it's not like they've been housed a bunch of times. These have been 1-2-run ball games a lot of the time. So they feel okay about that, but they love playing at Baum Stadium in front of maybe even 12,000 people tomorrow. This thing is sold out. The outfield where they put they call the hog pen, where all the grills and everybody is, that's sold out. All the seats are sold out. It is going to be an atmosphere that has not been rivaled here in a long time for a baseball game.
Yeah, and I've been down there. It is one of the jewels of college baseball. As we're joined again by Derek Ruskin, our special correspondent here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. You mentioned Knight. Hard to have a better record or better performance on this season than he's had. 16 starts, 11 wins, just 22 walks, 88 strikeouts, and 95 innings pitched. What makes him special?
I like his attitude. I like that he's just a no-nonsense kind of guy. Doesn't really, he's been talking recently about, not really getting into the social media thing and doing all that stuff. He's just here to pitch, and you just feel like he's a guy that's just here to do his job, and he's done it really, really well. And it's so unusual to see 20-something-year-olds who aren't all about the hype. They're just there to do their job, and he has been terrific all throughout the year. So that's what I like about him. Is he's just a no-nonsense kind of old-fashioned ball player, really.
This Arkansas offense, it almost looks like, sharks circling. If you give them a free pass, you commit an error, you just open the floodgates because they're going to take advantage of it. They're going to make you pay for it. So I would think the key for South Carolina to have any success, they can't walk these guys. They can't give any free passes.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think another thing, too, is we talked about the home field, but I think sometimes that early on in the first game that there can be a little pressure on the home team in a super regional. So I think for South Carolina to try and get to these guys early and make them have to come back would be something that would be very important for this Gamecock team to do, because everyone talks about the home field and everything, but when the biggest crowd that's seen you play all year is watching you for the first time on Saturday night, it can take a little bit. I think it could put a little pressure on the Arkansas team for a few innings.
You're someone, Derek, who has had the stethoscope on the Arkansas fan base for quite some time. How do they feel, and what are their impressions, and also yours, on this South Carolina ball club who came in, obviously, at one point, only 3 games over 500, and now 7 weeks later, they're one of the final 16?
Well, the message I got loud and clear from the team is that they're not really worried about what happened earlier on in the season. They know that things have totally turned around for South Carolina since then, and that they have a lot of respect for him, of course, because of that. So there's not a lot of, well, we took him 2 out of 3 earlier in the year, so this is going to be a cakewalk. There's a lot of players that understand how these baseball seasons can turn on a dime, and what you were on March 31st is totally different than what you are on May 31st. We've seen it here with Arkansas teams who will lose a midweek game in March that just leaves you scratching your head, and then they end up in the College World Series, which could happen again this year.
Well, midweek has not been kind to South Carolina. They had more head-scratching losses than could run your scalp dry. So from that perspective, this is about as unfathomable a turnaround for this season that we've expected. But at least in your mind, this is something for them, I believe, that they kind of feel like they're playing with house money. Is there more pressure on Arkansas in your mind, or is there more pressure on South Carolina?
That's a good point, and I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think that there is a little bit more pressure here because everybody just kind of expects Arkansas to go do it. And they're going to have, again, the biggest crowd that they've seen all year out here. And I think that there is just a little bit more pressure on the Razorbacks being the host team, trying to finish this thing off and get 2 more wins and head to the College World Series again.
Well, we'll look for your work here throughout the weekend on SportsTalkSC.com and also on our Twitter. He'll be tweeting from our account this weekend at Baum Stadium with the observations and all from South Carolina and Arkansas Regional. Great catching up with you, man. Thank you so much for the work you're doing this weekend for us, and have fun this weekend.
All right. Thank you, guys.
That's Derek Ruskin joining us here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. I think you hit on it, too. I mean, the pressure is all on the home team. It's such an expected place for them to be right now. If they do not get it to Omaha, it'd be disappointing for them. And of course, South Carolina can take, like I said, the house money approach. Recruiting, and also we'll hear from head coach from South Carolina, Mark Kingston, in advance of their super regional round.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Yeah, you mentioned it before. I wanted to at least pass our condolences out and just our bad feelings and remorse feelings for the passing of Anthony Bourdain at 61. He really made his mark on the Low Country with the show that he did in Charleston with not only the great restaurant down there, Husk, but he also was exposed to Waffle House the first time in Charleston. And just never know with whoever is dealing with issues, dealing with mental health issues. It certainly had its place with Kate Spade earlier this week, unfortunately, as well. So, again, our best wishes out to those who are affected by that passing. 6-0 is the score in favor of Oregon State. They lead Minnesota right now. That game is heading to the 6th inning. Again, earlier it was North Carolina 7, Stetson 4, Washington 8, Cal State Fullerton 5. He had a chance to hear from the head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks, Mark Kingston, as well, as they not only brought the pitching machines to Greenville, North Carolina, but they sent them ahead with them in a bus to Arkansas before they ended up getting themselves there last night. They actually, when we were there on Wednesday to talk to them, they were loading the pitching machines in the bus with the advanced team to go out there to Fayetteville. So they have everything that they possibly could need in Fayetteville. And this is how Mark Kingston addressed the media earlier today after South Carolina's practice at Baum Stadium in Fayetteville.
197 going into the SEC tournament. He's 9-20 since then.
Yeah, well, we'll watch video on all their hitters and have a game plan for all their hitters. Correct.
Coach, obviously you're familiar with the NCAA tournament and have experience being here, but how special is it to be here with South Carolina in your first year?
Very special. This is a group that I wanted to see get this opportunity. We've had some ups and downs over the course of the year, but this is a really good group of student athletes. So to see them play with a chance to get to Omaha, I'm really, really happy for them.
How's your pitching rotation set up for the tournament?
We'll throw Adam Hill tomorrow, and then we'll evaluate it from there as we go.
You guys are the only SEC team to beat Arkansas here. You're the last team to beat up here, period. What do you think about that? Does that give you guys some confidence? I think they're 32-3 here on the year.
Yeah, nothing that's happened in the past has anything to do with how these games will go. This weekend will be won by the team that plays the best this weekend.
You like the weather a little bit better than last time?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Last time it was cold, it was rainy, it was windy. This appears to be much better baseball weather.
You know, he'll throw a good game here. When he's on his game, what is he doing?
Well, when he's pitching effectively, he's throwing a lot of strikes. So the key for him is to make sure he pounds the strike zone, throw his secondary pitches for strikes as well. When he does that, he's a tough pitcher.
No, controlling emotions a little bit coming into this week. Have you sensed a change in your teams to beat it out there actually in Arkansas?
No, we're in a good place. We're loose, we're competitive, but we're focused, and that's what any team at this point trying to get to Omaha needs to be: loose, competitive, but also very focused. That's where we are.
What's changed with this South Carolina team since you played here in April?
A lot. You'll see guys playing different positions at this point in the season. You'll see a team that is more confident. You'll see a team that is now accomplished and has won a lot of big games along the way. So we're a better team in every area that you can be evaluated in right now. So that's why I think this will be a great series.
What are you looking for out of Blaine tonight? What do you remember about him?
Well, he's very good. I mean, he was drafted very highly for a reason. His record is what it is for a reason. So we know he's one of the best in the country. So we're gonna have to be at our best as well.
Between two teams, y'all have 21 players who were drafted. What do you guys think about the talent here?
Well, that should make for a very entertaining watch for the fans, for the media, for everybody interested. You're going to see a lot of good players out there that pretty soon after this whole run is over for these teams will be playing professional baseball. So it's a chance to see them play on a college field competing at the highest level.
What do you make of machines?
Very good, very good. We put the machine out there at 90 miles an hour, and the guys were taking a lot of good swings. So, usually when we're at our best, we're hitting that thing pretty well.
This is one of three supers with SEC teams matched against each other. What do you think about that?
I think it shows that the SEC is the best league in America. I don't think that can be argued at this point. There's a lot of good leagues out there, but the SEC is the best.
You wish you guys weren't all playing each other, so maybe more teams would have a chance to get to Omaha.
I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, my boss was the head of that committee, so I'm sure as heck not going to question any decisions that were made there. We're happy to be playing, and I think all 6 SEC teams are happy to be playing with a chance to go to Omaha.
What kind of scouting report do you have on Jared Gates, Arkansas's first baseman? He's hitting 197 going into the SEC tournament. He's 9-20 since then.
Yeah, well, we'll watch video on all their hitters and have a game plan for all their hitters. Correct. Actually, it did not fly. We put it on a bus and it came here. It's been here for a few days getting acclimated. Got here a couple of days ahead of us. It sat by the pool for the last couple of days, just getting ready for today. It looked good. Threw a lot of strikes, was consistent, and that's what we ask. That's what we ask out of our machine and our pitchers. So good quality strikes.
I swear to God, this is the most. I swear. I've never seen an inanimate object have such an effect on a baseball team. Have you? Because I haven't. I get that the pitching machine is getting questions about it now in Mark Kingston's pressers.
And Kingston,
they're embracing it.
Yeah, for his sense of humor, I kind of enjoyed that because he asked it as if they were asking about a human being.
Well, Korn took him to task on it when they first were talking about, hey, haven't been when that period of time where they had all that time away from home and they hadn't been on the pitching machines and included, I think, a loss to Citadel and a loss to some other teams, I think, or a loss to Furman, I think is who it was. Mm-hmm. But again, it was just the fact that has had such an effect on it. I find that to be part of the story, but I don't know if that's the whole story.
No, I think it partly gets you to think about the human condition. It may not have anything to do with it, but because you equate this object with when you started to hit and things started to go your way, it almost becomes part of it.
Mm-hmm. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly. Just like when you see what was it, the squirrel or whatever, the mascot?
Yeah, the rally squirrel.
The rally squirrel.
Yeah, from the Cardinals. Yeah,
they have the rally
rally machines,
pitching machine.
Yeah, as you can probably hear, we do not have Phil Kornblut with us today. He is off. Will be back on Monday with us. So his Kornblut's recruiting report will be delivered via surrogate today. We can tell you, Chris Steele, 2019 defensive back out of Bellflower, California, tweeted today he'll be at USC next weekend on an official visit. He also visited the Gamecocks in the spring, and he'll be joined this next weekend by Ryan Helinski, who plans a return trip to USC this weekend. Of course, the big Gamecock quarterback commit of next year. Steele has already been to Oklahoma, LSU, and Florida. He's also scheduling a visit with Southern Cal June 22nd. He's also considering a visit to Miami. He will announce his decision on July the 7th.
Now, that's the one the fans thought was not going to take a visit. They say we'll never get him here. But that last visit, of course, as you say, is at Southern California.
And he's a California kid.
And that's a difficult thing. Just like years ago, a guy by the name of Alshon Jeffries committed to Southern California, but the last visit was to South Carolina, and he decided the USC he would go to is the one near his home.
The USC is the real USC. Defensive back Jalen McCullough of Powder Springs, Georgia, also plans another visit to USC this summer. He has the Gamecocks, Tennessee, Auburn, and Alabama on his list to see. He doesn't have dates set and does want USC to get one of the camps in for Will Muschamp as well. He said all 4 schools are on him hard and in regular contact. Offensive lineman Adrian Medley visited Clemson this week along with his teammate and close friend, offensive lineman Hunter Rayburn. They go, of course, probably will go to the same school, according to him. They both visited Florida State Thursday, and this weekend they're also taking official visits to Texas A&M. Clemson offered Belton Honey a path offensive lineman Avery Reese at camp on Thursday. He has Georgia State, Coastal Carolina, and Alabama State offers. He plays tight end, but is being recruited as an offensive lineman. Clemson also offered today defensive back Brendan Gant of Lakeland, Florida. He is a former Alabama commit. Vontae Bentley of Birmingham, linebacker, visited Clemson Friday. He also visited in March. He has Clemson at the top of his list, along with Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Florida State as well in pursuit. Offensive lineman out of 2020, Paris Johnson of Cincinnati, also visited Clemson on Friday. Spencer Lytle on an official visit to Wisconsin this week, and he is a Clemson target. He'll visit Clemson unofficially next week. 2020 athlete Jalen Berger offered by USC. He's out of Ramsey, New Jersey. He has Bama offers, among others. TL Hanna quarterback Alex Meredith committed to Army. And 2020 Burns running back Rajay Harris offered by Appalachian State. There's your recruiting for today. Remember to check it out on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC, at our website, SportsTalkSC.com. And when on Twitter, use the hashtag STRecruiting. Golf next with George Bryan III, where his son is in the contention at the FedEx St. Jude. We'll come back on Sports Talk.
Best music compilation.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Welcome back, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. It is a Friday on this 8th day of June 2018. We've already heard from both head coaches of South Carolina and Arkansas in advance of their super regional round matchup coming up beginning tomorrow, 6:30. You'll see it on ESPN2. Sunday's contest, 3 o'clock on ESPN. Monday night they play, if necessary, at 7, also on ESPN. If you missed any of that, you can find it on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. We'll get more from Arkansas with our Colin Taylor of GameHawkCentral.com. He'll join us at 7:20. We're going to do the full Monty on NASCAR as we do every Friday at 7:30, and we'll talk some other news and notes across South Carolina and Clemson in our final segment. But now it's time for our run around the birdies and the bogeys in South Carolina. We check in with our good friend George Bryan III. Look at the leaderboard at St. Jude. I see a name that says Bryan underneath it, and I see it pretty high on that leaderboard there, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. I bet you're a proud papa going into the weekend.
Oh, I am. It's a lot of fun, and it's a privilege to be part of this group from Muirfield Village. And I'm not quite at Memphis yet, but I am en route. So, but another name that's really fun is Dustin. And all he had to do is, I think, birdie the last hole, and he would have been paired with Dustin tomorrow.
Ugh.
But I don't think that's going to work out based on what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, it's not going to work out, at least for that. The leaderboard as it sits right now, Dustin Johnson, 10 under par after shooting 63 today. Ryan Blaum and Andrew Putnam are ahead of Wesley at 9 under par. C.T. Pan has pulled into a tie for 4th with Wesley at 8 under par. Seamus Power, also the Irishman, is in that trio at 8 under par, tied for 4th. Brant Snedeker, Ches Reavie, Ricky Wierenski, and Dominic Bazzelli all rounding out the top 10. Danny McCarthy, Troy Merritt, Brooks Koepka, all in a group that are tied at 5 under par with Tyler Duncan as well. Among the other local notables on the card, William McGirt had a tough day today. Shot even par 72 under for the tournament, 8 back of the lead. Jonathan Bird, the former Clemson golfer, is at 1 over after shooting 71 today. What was working for Wesley today, George?
Well, I wasn't there with him, but he has all spring been hitting his golf ball pretty solid and where he's looking. And his putter is really, really good. That doesn't mean that all the putts go in, but it appears to me, and I saw it last week, saw all 4 rounds at Muirfield, his distance control is much better with his ball strikes. And it wasn't, he's added a few yards in length and due to, getting better. And so this spring he's played really, really good, but his distance control is what one of the big keys is right now. And on the PGA Tour, if you are near the edge and miss it by a foot or two, it can be miserable. And so that's what had happened all spring. He's hitting those edges. He's just inside. He's got a better grasp of his distance control, and his putter is always really good. So I'll be curious to see what the weekend brings. Last Sunday he struggled a little bit. He didn't do anything bad. Just missed those edges, just by a smidge, a foot or two. It'll be fun this Saturday. So I hope he can play his way into playing with Dustin on Sunday.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that people who the reporters were when we were talking to him down in Hilton Head was that long layoff that he took leading up to playing the Masters and the Heritage and that whole little stretch there. That whole layoff, one of the longest he's had, might have made him look a little rusty. Do you notice a difference now that he has gotten some more regular reps?
Oh, he's tremendous. That layoff is where he got back on track. When he had about a 2.5 year period where he didn't take any time to really improve his game, and he got quick in his transition, got a little bit off with his sequence, and he fixed that. He fixed it and got to hitting his ball really, really good. So that 5 weeks, 6 weeks off he took got him back on track. But the problem when he came back, his distances were technically with his long clubs as much as 8-10 yards farther. And that's a big difference out on the PGA Tour. And those little things, when you're a little bit off out there, that edge is very difficult. In fact, it's one shot's a big difference on the PGA Tour.
George, you've been successful in the first couple of days, first couple of rounds. You get a good night's sleep, and when you're dreaming, what is Wesley thinking about as he attacks the course for the third round, hoping to get into Sunday, walking up with the gallery clapping at the end?
Hey, bro, it's always great to hear your questions, George. It's fun. You guys are always spot on. And with Wesley absolutely thinks golf is a game. So he'll be as spontaneous as he can be. And Willie Lanier is a wonderful caddy. And so there's not as much thinking going on with Wesley and a lot of these guys, as most people would believe, he's going out to have fun. And yeah, he's got a game plan. Most of that's on Willie's shoulders. And he's got his targets and his ideas, but shoot, he'll, like anybody and any athlete in the arena, they have to take the situation, what to win, the conditions, and react. So, but he'll have a lot of fun. I promise you that having fun will be one of the top priorities for Wesley.
I know that he won in Kapalua. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but even outside of that, Dustin Johnson's looked locked in, and he hasn't played a lot. He played the Masters, he played at RBC, the Players, and the Memorial leading up to the St. Jude, and of course next week at Shinnecock. But is there a guy who is more locked in right now than this guy on the golf course?
Well, there's a lot of guys locked in on the PGA Tour. I'll have to wait this week and try to feel it. Last week, Jack Nicklaus and Spires, everybody wanted to win that tournament. Everybody wanted to play great for Jack. But when Dustin gets focused, and it's been fun seeing him as much. Wesley's been privileged and played his way near to play the same events as Dustin, and Dustin's dialed in. But here's the thing about Dustin. I don't ever see – everybody's interpretation is different. But Dustin looks the same to me all the time. Really good. And he's been that way for several years. He is really pretty special to watch. And sometimes it doesn't turn out on TV, doesn't end up in the last group or whatever. But Dustin Johnson stays dialed in. He works really hard, harder than most people probably would think. So,
as we get ready for Shinnecock Hills next week on Long Island, it's one of the landmark courses. It's hosted a ton of these types of events, and it's one that obviously did not suit the USGA well last time it was here. What are you hearing about how that course is going to play this time around?
You know what? I wish I had something different to say, but I don't have any reports about Shinnecock. Wesley won't be playing there this year, and I don't know really what. Don't know if by chance he were to win. Not sure even if he would get in the U.S. Open, even if he does win in Memphis. At this point, he's not in. I haven't heard that much about what they've done different to make it better than last time, but I do know it's a fabulous venue, and I look forward to it. Man, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't know. USG always. Here's one thing I will tell you: I know for a fact it will be very tough.
That is true.
Extremely tough.
They were not happy with all those low numbers last time they were there. I know that for a fact.
Hey, and they tend to when the way they correct is fairly penal. They will have an edge out. And a couple of events ago, they let one of the greens bake on out to anyway. Don't want to talk too much about what little I know. But the USGA usually bounces back when they get beat up. That's a fact.
Just ask the folks at Chambers Bay how they felt about their first U.S. Open experience.
Amen. Man, I enjoyed it on the road and look forward to next time. Keep time to shoot a phone.
Give Wesley our best and our best of luck to him this weekend. George Bryan, the birdies and bogeys. Back to the baseball. Colin Taylor, Gamecock Central, joins us next on Sports Talk.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
You know, Pro, I know the real reason why Corn's not here today. He's ducking me. We got Subway Series Part 1,
Okay.
and the Mets are leading the Yankees 1-0. That's why
Ding,
he's
ding,
ducking
ding,
me.
ding, ding,
That's
ding.
why he's ducking me. I'm real tired of you ducking me, Corn. He's in
Now,
Philadelphia.
what inning are we in?
First.
Oh, okay.
First.
I was just asking.
He's in Philly right now. I gave him strict instructions to go whiz wit on his Philadelphia cheesesteak, his virgin Philadelphia cheesesteak. And he's like, what do you mean they put cheese whiz on their Philly cheesesteak? I'm like, Corn, that's the way they do it in Philly, man. Like, provolone thing is not a real thing. Anyway, we are pleased to be joined on the telephone. You know, we had some of these people who cover South Carolina baseball bragging about how many radio shows they got on. Well, I just decided to get on my favorite guy who covers baseball, and that's Colin Taylor of GamecockCentral.com. He joins us here from Fayetteville, Arkansas. Is it as deliverance-filled as I told you it would be, Colin?
It's an interesting place. I haven't gotten a chance to explore it all yet, but the airport we flew into was kind of tucked away in the middle of nowhere. So I'm excited to see what this town has to offer, and hopefully it's a little bit more than the airport that we got to fly into today.
I tell you right now, the downtown is quaint. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
As far as everyone likes to focus on that 20-17 time where South Carolina lost to PC, went into that one weekend, and people were writing them off and leaving them for dead. What, in your mind, has been the biggest change since then?
I think it's just been a kind of a culmination of a lot of different things. Everyone's kind of gotten healthy at the right time. You get Madison Stokes back, you get Noah Campbell back. You have the emergence. I think one of the biggest things is the emergence of Cody Morris as an absolute shutdown guy. He's had, for the last month and a half, he's been about as lights out as you can get. You saw that against ECU, 7 1/3 innings. He's been dominant. And I think that South Carolina's really relied on him heavily in games this year, and he's been reliable down the stretch. So I think it's a culmination of things kind of led by the fact that Cody Morris has been really, really good over the last 3 or 4 starts down the line, and culminating with him getting drafted this week.
I think it's a pitching machine myself. No, I'm just joking with you, Colin. But the key point is how much, and we know about the health issue early in the campaign for South Carolina, but how much of it, in your opinion, was just the fact that here's a team getting used to its new coaching staff under fire? Obviously, they've had the preseason and the practice during the fall, but to play with this group of coaches for the first time with the bullets flying.
Yeah, and I think that had a little bit to do with it. They had to kind of learn how this coaching staff operated during the season, how they treated practices and workouts and things like that. And a lot of it was the coaching staff kind of learning how to deal with this team, and what combination of players work well together. What players do well in this part of the lineup, and even Coach Mark Kingston said it a little bit. They kind of settled on a lineup. They kind of got some consistency there, and players were able to settle into those roles. And I think you're seeing kind of the benefits of it right now, that players are kind of flourishing in the roles that they were given, and they figured out how to win with the guys that they had, and they've maximized talent. I think that's kind of come from both sides, really kind of getting to know each other and learning how each side operates. But I think you're seeing the rewards of both of it right now.
Colin Taylor, GamecockCentral.com, covering the baseball series in Arkansas, looking at where Arkansas has been since then, where South Carolina has been since that first series between the two. And that series was such a fluky series because of the weather and the fact that they had to play the two on Sunday. And in my mind, I think South Carolina feels that they didn't acquit themselves properly, and that they could have acquitted themselves better, even despite the fact that they won the opener.
Yeah, and from everything that I've heard about that series, it was just absolutely miserable. The last, those 2 games on day 3, and no one really wanted to be there. It was cold, it was windy, it was just awful. So I think that they kind of want to show what they can do, and they played them close in both of those games. They weren't blowouts by any means. So I think they're kind of wanting to go down there and show what they're made of and kind of prove that they can hang with the big boys, because Arkansas was picked by a lot of national media to go to Omaha at the beginning of the tournament, and some even picked them to win the national title. So I think they see it as a challenge to kind of go down there and show that, you know, the win down there wasn't a fluke and that they can actually kind of hang, because they are playing as one of the best teams in the country right now, along with Arkansas. So I think that, I don't want to say there's a chip on their shoulder, but, you know, they're going down there to try and prove something, that they are able to go out there and hang with the big boys, especially this season.
The emergence of Danny Blair in the postseason, and I guess the second line of questioning would be, when will there be a TJ Hopkins sighting, and has there been any successful treatment to his back, or he's still sort of in limbo as far as contributing to this team?
Yeah, and I think, you know, Danny Blair is going to keep hitting 3-run home runs and hitting 500. I think you keep him in there as long as that bat's going to keep him in there. And, you know, with Hopkins, I think you're going to see a lot of what you've seen over the last couple of weeks with him as a defensive sub for the majority of it. We got to watch practice today, and I didn't see him take any BP. So he was kind of off to the sidelines on that. He took a couple dummy swings in the dugout, but nothing really strenuous. So I don't think he's really able to go up there and take hacks at a consistent rate. So I don't know if we're going to see him at the plate this weekend, but I think you'll see kind of the same capacity as what we've seen in the past, with him coming in maybe late in games if they need a defensive sub, or potentially as a pinch runner.
Of course, the Gamecocks set a school record with 10 selections in the draft, and a couple of signees got taken as well. What can you tell us, at least from what you're hearing, how the draft will affect the Gamecocks for next year?
You know, I think that a lot of the guys that were picked are, you know, both on the current team and signees are maybe leaning toward professional baseball, just because of the way that the, you know, MLB incentivizes draft eligible sophomores and juniors to go, because they lose a lot of leverage as they get further on in their college careers. I think you'll see guys like Graham Lawson and Rich Chapman, and maybe potentially Eddie Demarius go pro, just because they lose all their leverage if they opt to come back for a senior season. And all three have had really productive times over the last stretch of the games. And as for the signees, I think there were 6 signees taken: Owen White, Todd Bradley, Blaze Alexander, Josiah Seitler, Brady Allen, and Wes Clark. And I think 4 of the 6 are signable prospects. I think Owen White, Taj Bradley, and Blaze Alexander are all leaning towards signing professional deals, with Josiah Seitler kind of being up in the air. And then I think you're going to see Brady Allen and Wes Clark both come to school. I talked with Brady a little bit before the draft, and he said that an offer would really have to wow him to come to forego college, and I don't see that happening. He got picked up pretty late. So I think you'll see him and Wes Clark both, but I don't think it's going to look good for the other, I guess, 4 signees in that class if they're going to come to school or not.
Yeah, Allen and Clark were taken in the last 2 rounds, so you would expect them to possibly make their way to Columbia. Demarius is a curious case, Colin, because while at 17, you know, that's obviously that's not high, but at the same time, you could maybe give him more innings, because he was used more in a spot role and a swing role. If you promise him a starting spot in the rotation coming back, I don't see why he doesn't take that maybe and possibly try to improve that stock.
And a lot of it, too, will come down to the discussions Demarius had. I mean, he got drafted, I think, the 27th round. So a lot will depend on the conversations he has with the major league team. And, you know, for him, it depends on the fit. If he feels like he's a good fit in that organization, I think he was picked up by the Reds.
Yes.
You know, it'll depend on if he feels like he's a good fit there, and kind of the coaching and the discipline he'll get. So there's a lot of factors that come into it. I think they'll sit down and talk with the coaching staff and with the Reds organization and make a decision after that. But for guys like Graham, Lawson, LP Tolbert, and Rich Chapman, who were all picked in that 11 to 20 range, it'll probably be a likely that's usually where you see guys going pro, especially as their junior years come to an end.
Short answer. I got like 10 seconds. Are you going to Omaha?
No, I don't think. I think Arkansas is just too good. I think it'll be a close series, but Arkansas will end up pulling out 2 wins.
Colin, enjoy as much of Fayetteville as you possibly can over the next couple of days.
I will do my best. I appreciate it.
Colin Taylor here on Sports Talk. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network are brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, honoring our servicemen and women with Founders Military Mortgage. Apply online at foundersfcu.com/mortgage or at a Founders location where a qualified mortgage loan officer will help you through the application process. The gentlemen of NASCAR this weekend head to Michigan. That is where the Firekeepers Casino 400 takes place, and it's time to go around the track. The full Monty on NASCAR begins now. Monty Dutton joining us as he does every Friday. Kurt Busch won the pole, the Busch pole, aptly named. Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano I don't see any surprises out of the top 5 there other than the fact that Kyle Larson's back at 26th, Monty.
Michigan is, over history, an unusually good track for Fords. And while this year, the Fords have won 7 races, Toyota 6, and Chevrolet 1, but Ford has been stronger in qualifying even than race days. And so, and it also looked like, that this was a particularly dominant day for Fords in qualifying. That isn't overwhelmingly germane to the race, but it is a sign that they're going to be strong. You would think that the Michigander, Brad Keselowski, would dearly love to win at Michigan. And so that's a possibility for Saturday. But Michigan is really, really fast. It's one of those tracks that they might, the package they used to such good effect in the All-Star race a few weeks ago, that Michigan's one of the places they may later try it. And they're having a similar package in place in the Xfinity race tomorrow. But it'll be interesting because the trending lately has been Toyota, and but Fords, at least based on practice and qualifying, look exceptionally strong at the home of the track closest to the big 3 automakers.
I was going to ask you, how much does that just the centering in Detroit? Obviously, we mentioned 7 Fords out of the top 10. The other 3 are Toyotas. How much is that proximity? Home track advantage, if you will, for the Fords? How much does that play into the reason why they're so strong here?
I don't think the reason they're strong is because Detroit's nearby. I think it's the reason they're popular. I think probably because all their workers and, even most of the plants, the foreign manufacturers who are in America are typically not around Detroit. And so I think domestic manufacturers are particularly popular, but I don't really think that means they win. I think that, they put effort into winning every week. But over many years, though, I would say that for whatever, perhaps the horsepower required or the strength of the Ford general engineering, I think that Michigan has historically been a track where Fords have overperformed.
As far as Kyle Larson is concerned, still before the qualifying round at 26 notwithstanding, he was a favorite in this race coming up. How does is it difficult, Monty, if he's got a good ride to come back from that 26th position? And what kind of strategy would he use to get to the front coming from that position?
Well, his specialty is 2-mile tracks, of which Michigan and Fontana, California. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in his last 5 races on 2-mile tracks, all of his wins have been on 2-mile tracks. And I think it might be 3 or it might be out of 4. It might be first, second, or it might be 4 first and a second. But he has a stunning record in, the California and the Michigan tracks are very similar. Fontana is slightly, just a little bit less banked, but I think something like 18 to 14 degrees. But he comes in this weekend as a favorite for obvious reasons, but I think all across the board, this was a very disappointing day in qualifying and practice for Chevrolets, who are, getting a little better, but they're not there yet. And, you have to look at it. Chevrolet doesn't, all their, I sound like a race car driver. They always say when an old driver, they say, well, I can assure you that so-and-so, Jimmy Johnson didn't forget how to drive. Well, the fact is that Chevrolet, everybody's something because Chevrolets are something. They have a new car, Camaro. Lawson did say in the last couple of days that he thinks some people are blaming the new Camaro in use they're using it as a crutch.
Unfairly.
But that was before he went out and qualified 26.
Right. Understand it. We're talking, of course, Monty Dutton, as we do every Friday here, the Full Monty on NASCAR. We've talked a lot of this season about how the wins have been, basically stacked in only a couple of guys. Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr. have the bulk of the wins. Nobody outside of those guys has multiple victories. Who do you think is maybe on the outside looking in to possibly join that triumvirate? Is it somebody like Kurt Busch, who has the pole, or the hometown guy Keselowski? Is that group going to grow, or are we seeing that basically those three who I mentioned, Kyle, Kevin, and even a guy like Joey Logano who's up there, we have basically already distinguished guys who are already going to basically be the contenders come the later part of the season?
Well, it really is a phenomenon because this season is dead opposite of last year at this point.
Right.
Because last year at this point, the speculation was whether almost all of the playoff field would be made up of people who won races because there were so many winners.
Right.
Now, from this point on last year, a year ago, Truex had 2 wins just like he does this year. And he sort of took off the rest of the year.
Right.
But this year, it's very, very unusual. It's not unusual for one guy to have a bunch of wins, but at the rate they're going, based on the amount of season, at the end of the year, the way it forecasts is Harvick would have 12 wins, Kyle Busch 10, and Truex 5. That's stunning. It probably also will not happen because things always are going to reverse. But there's no coherent reason why this has flip-flopped. But it has. But, it's probably one of those things where there's a little something to it, but part of it is coincidence too, and part of it will even out. But part of it is just that Chevy guys aren't winning. But it's really hard. It really is. There's no particular reason that the victory should be clumped. And I think there's bound to be some diversification. Logano's won for Penske, but Keselowski is a fine driver who hasn't won yet. He's not far away. He's sort of my hunch for Sunday, which means he hasn't got a chance in hell, of course. but I think it's bound to diversify a little bit. And but there's a whole lot of people who really need to win, and Kurt Busch is one of them. That's a 4-car team that Kurt Busch drives for.
Mm-hmm.
And Harvick and Boyer are the only ones who have won, and Eric Almirola and Kurt Busch has been strong in qualifying, but he's one of those guys that something seems to happen to him in the race, whether by a speeding penalty or mistake or getting in a wreck. And Kurt Busch is a very good driver, so he could win on Sunday. And, but I always have the feeling it's quite opposite. When people always, to me, overreact, they think that just because the season's gone like this, it'll stay that way. And I tend to think that the law of averages will catch up the other way. To me, I tend to think if a guy's won 3 straight races at the track, he's due to have a bad day. That's the way I looked at it with Kyle Larson. I think on 2-mile tracks, he's won more than he probably should have. So he probably should win somewhere else. He's a fine driver.
Monty, got about 10 seconds. Who's your winner?
Keselowski.
All righty. He's going hometown pick. Thanks so much for the time, Monty. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me.
That is Monty Dutton, the full Monty on NASCAR here. We will wrap things up for the week when we come back here on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
And at SportsTalkSC.com, as well as at SportsTalkSC on Twitter, we'll have coverage again from our pal Derek Ruskin. He'll be out there in Fayetteville at Baum Stadium to cover South Carolina and Arkansas. Our final thoughts on that here coming up. I did want to bring this into the conversation. Good friend of the program, Andrew Ramspacher, who is the beat writer for the South Carolina men's basketball team, among other duties there. This was the opening line of his piece he wrote, I believe it was yesterday, on the comments of why the basketball schedule for USC this year is the toughest in the Frank Martin era. The first words out of his mouth were, "It wasn't the response a reporter was looking for, but Frank Martin used the question to push something off his chest." Now, when I saw that, I saw the corresponding quote, I said, "Oh no, this is something that I said." And this was probably one of my first, since being down here, interactions with Frank Martin. And let's just say I set him off. What would it take in this non-conference season, aside from the overall record, what would it take for you to either be satisfied with the progress? What tangibly do you have to see from this group to know that you've reached them and that you've made the kind of progress you want to see?
Yeah, I'm going to answer your question in a second, but you said something to trigger something in my head. You know, I know some coaches say they don't read, they don't listen, they don't this, whatever. I'm getting to the point in the year where I do stop reading and listening. But the rest of the year, I do read and listen. Do me a favor, because you guys cover our team. And I've already read this. I've already heard this. We're not playing a soft non-conference schedule. Don't regurgitate that, please. That's insulting to me. Okay? That's insulting to our players. Okay? If you actually do your homework and you want to say we're not playing a big name team, I can live with that. Okay? Our strength of non-conference schedule RPI is better than last year's non-conference strength of schedule RPI. Do a little legwork. Western Michigan's picked to win their league. We're going to play them probably twice. Wyoming just won 22 games. They're good. Returned their whole team. So let's not do that. And if you choose to do that, do whatever you want, but don't expect me to be very happy with you. That's your choice. You said that, it triggered that in my head. No, but you said the non-conference schedule and it triggered that in my head. And it's something that I wanted to share with the folks that cover our team. Because I'm just telling you, that insults me. When people say I'm soft or I like soft, that insults me.
I didn't say it was soft.
Oh no, what you did was you actually helped him out, because you did trigger him to think about somebody.
He felt triggered
about the non-conference schedule. You weren't the one who actually pulled the trigger. No. You just had your finger on it.
I just loaded the gun and he pulled the trigger. To be fair, his non-conference strength of schedule, according to Ken Palm, was ranked 140th. His non-conference adjusted strength of schedule was 140th out of 351 teams in Division I college basketball. Let's just say he doesn't have to go defending it this upcoming year because of the known games that we know about in their schedule. And again, this is from Andrew's report. Stony Brook, Norfolk State, Virginia, Clemson, Coastal, at Michigan, home Wyoming, Oklahoma State in the Big 12 SEC Challenge, Providence, and then possibly another matchup with Michigan and/or George Washington in a neutral site contest. And oh, by the way, they play in the SEC where they will play teams that went to they had a lot of teams go to the NCAA tournament last year. So the strength of schedule, again, it really didn't matter for them this year because of their win-loss record. But just from the standpoint of where they will be going into SEC play, they will be a lot more battle-tested than last year's squad at that point.
Yeah, and I think probably just from the standpoint of having, even though very young, more guys at the guard position. I thought they ran out of gas at the guard position, and that had to do not only with talent but also with injury, because they were expecting the transfer from Delaware to be good, but his leg never responded.
Yes.
His
Corey Holden.
Corey Holden, his the lightning in his bottle moment was probably at Clemson when he played some of the best basketball he could, but his leg couldn't stand up.
And he unfortunately got injured in that matchup too. Of the 23 opponents we know that they're going to play this upcoming year, 12 of them were in the NCAA tournament last year. They'll play Tennessee twice, A&M twice, and Missouri twice. Those are the three home and homes that they have amongst teams from the SEC. So they get no favors for the second year in a row, by the way, from the SEC. They have to go to Kentucky. They've got to go to LSU. They got to go to Vanderbilt. They got to go to Florida. And the hosts they get are Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, and Ole Miss. I mean, that's hard.
Well,
and then
Miss,
the home and homes are Georgia, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Missouri, A&M.
Well, Ole Miss, that's
one.
You should be able
to
win that game. Now Kentucky came to South Carolina last year,
right?
So you could understand that, and also, at one point Frank said that he would get back into the Big 12 matchup when they let him play a home game, which they did last year.
Right.
Now he goes out to Oklahoma State, but I think probably the key point is I think that not just this region, but the country has found out and have a different sort of respect for what the Southeastern Conference is in basketball. I think they wanted to hold out as long as they could because their mind was this conference can't be good at football and basketball, can it?
And baseball and softball.
Yeah, exactly.
And volleyball.
But they are. And they saw it last year, and they proved it on the court, which is where you should have to prove it. And,
it stands to reason, too. Again, we had the news earlier today about Clemson scheduling a non-conference standalone game with Mississippi State. We're seeing more teams who are, I would almost say they were afraid to schedule in the ACC versus SEC because they were afraid that, if it was a loss, it could be a millstone. And now we're seeing the SEC's RPI is such and is as strong as such now amongst its peers to where not only do those games help, but there's more incentive behind those teams scheduling those games.
Yeah. North Carolina will always play Kentucky, but they've always had a reason why they wouldn't schedule a home and home with a South Carolina. Why should we give them juice?
Right.
And that's the key. People have to understand that when you put together a schedule, coaches look at everything. And Roy Williams said, look, South Carolina, in my mind, could be better, but I'm not going to help them get there.
Right.
I'm not going to play them because that gives them juice. And people have to understand that's one of the difficulties being a South Carolina, why it's difficult to schedule. Now, they thought they'd be able to get Georgia Tech on the schedule as AC team, but it ended up they worked out and they got Virginia. And let's face it, other than that little debacle in Charlotte,
that's no slouch now.
Virginia was a good basketball team.
That's going to be, you want to talk about a game, if you see it out in Vegas, bet the under, okay? Because Virginia's going to come in playing defense, and Frank Martin, he just is aroused by the word defense.
Yeah.
So in that respect, they can't set the over/under for that game low enough when they play that on December the 19th at Colonial Life Arena. What happens this weekend in Fayetteville?
I think it goes 3 games, and on Monday, Arkansas wins it. They're the home team. I think probably South Carolina's bullpen, as good as it is, will not be able to hold the Hogs for 3 games.
I think that we get a Sunday victory from South Carolina. I just think that by the time we get to Monday, they will have, again, I think, run out of pitching and run out of offense to handle, again, the very, very tough environment that is Baum Stadium. But they've surprised before. They've surprised over the last 7 weeks. No one wants to pick them. Nobody wants to get on their back.
And they like it just like that.
And maybe they'll go to Omaha. Who knows? We'll just make us all look like we're crazy. Hope you had a good week. Hope you had a good day. Hope you enjoyed us. Remember, SportsTalkSC.com, SportsTalkSC on Twitter for the coverage this weekend. And we'll talk to you about it all on Monday, 6 o'clock right here. Corn will rejoin us here on Sports Talk.